Guys, it's Sarah and today is Booklist Thursday. This is a video series I do with my friend Lindsay over at Lindsay's Little Library. And every Thursday we bring you some sort of list or book topic that we feel like talking about for the week. And this week we are actually going to be talking about some of our favorites from our past 5-star prediction lists. So we do 5-star predictions regularly. We have done this actually since 2017, I think. Like late 2017 is when we started doing 5-star predictions, and we've done them consistently ever since then. They're just fun, and we love picking, some books that we think are going to be 5 stars and reading them and then following up, and it's just been so much fun. So we thought we would revisit some of our older 5-star prediction videos and watch the follow-ups and see what we thought of the books and just kind of refresh ourselves on what we even picked, because after a while you don't remember. I don't remember a lot of these that I picked specifically for 5-star predictions. And it was fun just to kind of go back and look through them and see what we picked and see what some of our favorites were. This can also be a good reference for you if you're going to be doing the Booklist Backlist Readathon coming up in April that we announced last week. This could be a good reference for if you want to pick your own 5-star predictions. These are some that we picked for 5-star predictions, and they ended up being favorites. Going through them, I picked some books that were have become all-time favorites of mine now. So I was trying to pick some that I just haven't talked about for a while or talked about very much, because I definitely tend to talk about some of my all-time favorite books quite a bit, and I just don't want to be super repetitive. So these are some that were definitely favorites from 5-star predictions. Obviously, I've given all these 5 stars, and some of them I do consider some favorites of all time, even if I don't talk about them all the time on my channel. So yeah, it's a good list though. Okay, the first one is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. Karen Slaughter is one of my favorite authors. She is very adult. She's very brutal. She's very bloody. She's very graphic in her details. That's why I love her. So, fair warning. And this one, of the books that I've read from her, this one is the most intense. So, know that going in. This is one of the most graphic and brutal books I've ever read. And I loved it. This is my favorite from her. It is following a woman whose older sister had gone missing in college, and her body was never found. So she's kind of presumed dead. However, they just don't really know. She could just still be missing. They don't have closure on that. So this happened when she was younger. Her sister was in college when this happened. And so this is years and years later. This woman is now married and has a family and is dealing with the aftermath of the murder of her husband. So this poor woman's been through a lot, right? So this happens all at the beginning of the book. And upon her husband's death, she starts finding out some things about his life that she never knew, and discovering that maybe he was keeping a whole bunch of secrets from her, and almost leading a double life that she never knew about. So she is dealing with the fallout of this because there's some consequences to some of his actions, and she is having to not only discover exactly what was going on right underneath her nose, but what she has to do to be safe, because it's all about safety for her. So, and then you also see her deal with her family, especially her parents and her other sister. Their relationship is very strained. And so you're kind of going through all that with her as well. And some things happen in this book, you guys. Oh, it's so good. This is a book I would reread. But again, very brutal, very adult. So get ready for the graphic stuff, but it's fantastic. The next one is Furyborn. This is by Claire Legrand. This is the first book in a young adult fantasy trilogy, a trilogy I have not finished yet. It's fine. I have read the first 2 books though. And this one actually follows 2 different queens in 2 different timelines. And both of the queens have some sort of prophecy on them. One of them is supposed to save the world, The other one is supposed to try to ruin it. And so you're following them in their two separate timelines, and you're not sure which queen is supposed to be which. So you're following one in a very past timeline, and I think these are 100 years apart, I want to say, if I'm correct. It's been a while. But you're following the past timeline, which I kind of preferred, to be honest with you. I thought that that timeline was a lot more interesting. There was just so much magical just descriptions, and there was trials that were involved in that one, which was really, really cool, which I loved. She was really a queen who was forced to prove herself to the people. A lot of people didn't believe in her and didn't trust her, and so she really felt the need to prove herself and win the love of the people around her. So that was really cool. And then you also follow a more present timeline, which is 100 years later, and we are following the queen in that timeline. However, she doesn't really know that she's supposed to be the queen. And so you see her struggle with leading the life she's supposed to live versus the life she wants to live. So that was really interesting. And then she is also realizing how she is tied to people that are connected to the past timeline as well. So there's some connections there. But yeah, I really loved it. I read this one so quickly, and it's a big, thick book. And the sequel was good as well. And I do need to finish up that trilogy. That one is sitting in my little basket over there, ready for me to finish it up. But it's a really good, solid young adult fantasy series. And yeah, it's really good. Claire Legren is another favorite author of mine. Then we're going to go to contemporary, and that is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is, I'm going to say, a hard-hitting contemporary because it is a romance. It's a second chance romance. However, it deals with a lot of struggle and, you know, just harder topics. So we follow this couple, and you see them meet when they are children, basically. They're neighbors. And you see their friendship grow. And it doesn't become romantic until years and years later. So they are very, very good friends for a long time before they become a couple. And it's definitely one of those things where they were just afraid they were going to mess up their friendship by becoming a couple. And essentially that actually kind of does happen. So you see them meet up years and years later after high school, where like they haven't seen each other or talked to each other or done any, like, zero communication for, I think 11 years, I think is what it was. And they just randomly meet on the street one day. And so you see them, you know, just feel that instant connection again that they used to have. And you see them try to connect again. All the while you're going back and finding out what happened leading up to their big fallout. And so you're going back and forth, definitely. And it does become kind of a second chance romance, you know, because they both still feel that pull towards each other, even though they are trying to fight it, both of them. And you just kind of see what happens. But, oh man, the story was beautiful. It really, really was. It was really well done. The male protagonist in this, his name is Elliot, and I will never forget him. He is one of the best characters I've ever read, and I would do anything for him. Yeah, so just absolutely fantastic. And that's one that Lindsay actually sent to me. Okay, the next one I would say is probably the biggest surprise on this list, because I had put it on my 5-star predictions, but when I actually read it, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, and that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Now, this one follows Victor and Eli. They are college roommates. They are both in kind of a science background or a science program. And they have figured out a way to create superhumans, basically. They have figured out how humans can give themselves superpowers. So this is a world where, like, superheroes exist, like people with superhuman powers. It's a thing. And they have figured out how to create that. Versus just being born with it or just being lucky to have them. They figured out how you can actually give it to yourself. And so you see them test it on themselves they become the human subjects for their research. And some things happen because of that. Some corruption happens, some power-hungry things happen, some vigilante stuff happens, and the cool thing about this book is that Victor and Eli, neither one of them are good people. Like, it's called Vicious for a reason. They're both kind of villains. They're anti-heroes. They're not good people. They're not doing good things. They try to convince themselves that they are, but they're really not. What they're doing is not good for humanity. And so you really feel that kind of struggle with, but should I be on one of their sides? Like, because I feel like I should be, because they're kind of battling it out now because they almost become enemies. And yeah, it's so good. I read this one really quickly. It was just a really quick and fun and fast-paced read. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was a complete surprise, 5 stars. And the last one is my probably, I would say my favorite nonfiction of all time, and that's The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. This is a biography of Ted Bundy and Anne Rule's personal relationship with him because they were friends. And so to me, that's what made this book so special, is because you get her personal knowledge of him as a person before he became infamous. So you see her struggle with him being brought out into the light and what he's doing. You see her struggle with suspecting him. You see her struggle with him reaching out to her from jail after he's already caught. He's still reaching out to her. And so you really see her struggle with that throughout, everything. And oh man, this book, I learned a lot in this book because we all know the name Ted Bundy. He is one of the most infamous serial killers of our time. And so I knew that he killed women, but I didn't know exactly what he did. And I found that out in this book. And yeah, like, it was bad. It was really bad. Just the... I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around what kind of demented person can do the sorts of things that he did to these women to another human being. There's no words. There really aren't. So I learned a lot. There was also a lot of places described in this book, especially, in Florida, because he was captured at Pensacola, which is where I went to college. He was captured on a street that I walked down quite a bit when I went out in college, in the downtown area. So that was a little creepy. I never knew that before I read this book. I didn't know that he was captured there and was arrested right on Cervantes Street. And I knew about the Florida State sorority house thing. That's one of the things that was most reported on, I think. But gosh, that is definitely the scene that really stuck out in my brain about how horrifying this man was, and the things that he did to those poor girls. And so I knew about that took place at FSU. I didn't know that, he went from Tallahassee to Pensacola, on I-10. I drove that, I don't even know how many times. And he stopped and stayed in Crestview, which is right north. That's the exit we get off of I-10 to go to my town. So that was a little creepy. Even though this all happened, I wasn't even born, guys. I wasn't even born when all this happened, but it's still it had some local stuff that I knew, places I knew and stuff. So that was kind of creepy, but yeah, it's definitely, if you're interested in serial killers and you can read that kind of stuff and you haven't read this book, I highly, highly recommend it. And just Anne Rule having that personal connection to Ted, I think made this just top-notch nonfiction for me, and I loved it. That's another one I would read again. Even though it was hard, I would still read it again. It was really, really good. So yeah. Okay, guys, those are 5 of some of my favorite 5-star predictions that I've picked over the years. And they're not ones that I talk about a ton on here, but they are definitely some that stick out to me as some of my favorite books that I've read. And I hope that helps. So make sure you go check out Lindsay today. She's talking about some of her favorites as well. And we hope that these can be a little bit of recommendation for you too. So if you haven't picked any of these up and you've thought about it, maybe it helps to know that someone else has given them 5 stars and definitely highly recommends all of these. But make sure you go check out Lindsay and see what she's talking about today too. I'm excited to see what she picks. And we will talk to you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.